So far, so good.
Once again, we are blessed with our friend Jean McCord, who will continue last week's exploration of Cherokee spirituality and sort of conceptions of the earth, which is a topic we've been examining for several weeks in the church here. And so thank you, Jean, and take it away.
Thank you. Thank you. OCO. We're all now Cherokee speakers. It's so good to be back with you this morning. I have a special person who came to visit, my daughter, Sabrelle. Drove up from Cincinnati this morning, and I said, I wanted to show her off. So, it's really good to be able to continue our discussions, and I promise today I'm not going to talk as much so that you all have a chance, and I've invited my friend Sharon to share something also. So I hope you have a great time. Your mic's kind of far. Is it on? Try. Let me see. Now is it on?
I think so.
Yeah?
I think so.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. Can you hear me? Except it's kind of far from you.
Yeah, put the mic.
Can you put that thing closer? Sure. Yeah. People with hearing problems. Okay. Yeah, how about this? Is this better? Yeah. You should have brought my husband. He can't hear for nothing. You just sit there. Yeah. I'll hear like talking. Did you ever hear the song The Teddy Bear's Picnic? Yes. That's where the title for today's came. If you go down, I'm not going to sing. I promise you can sing it. I am going to share what the elders say. We forget. So we consider ourselves superior. But we are, after all, a mere part of the creation. And we must consider to understand where we are, who we are. We stand somewhere between the mountain and the ant. Somewhere, and only there, is a part and parcel of creation. Oren Lyons, Onondaga. I brought with me today one of our favorite pictures from an Anishinaabe Indian in Manitoulin. And his name is Jimmy Jacko. It is entitled Hunter-Gatherers in the Tree of Knowledge. Most Indian cultures have a sacred tree. We would call it a tree of life, a tree of knowledge. Christians, too, have a tradition, the tree of life. It was lost a long time ago in the Garden of Eden. Remember the story? For us, the sacred tree is an ongoing and powerful metaphor for life with stories embedded in the time it was a seedling to the time of its maturity, when it produces seeds of its own. In native stories, it is referred to as the life-giving principle of the earth that connects and nourishes life from the roots down under the ground, and it rises up to the sky. It is a symbolic and divine energy that is represented to us in art, dance, song, language, and science. Now, the dominant culture tends to characterize indigenous thinking as full of myth and romanticized recollections. It is not. Indigenous thinking is embedded in realism and has been developed through intimate relationships with plants, animals, and cycles of nature, which are not mythic, nor are they often romantic. Learning about nature can be as painful as it is beneficial, certainly as we have experienced in this country in the last few weeks. Gregory Coyetti has written about the coming to know. When we engage with every aspect of our environment and involve our minds and our feelings in this engagement, we call it coming to know. That reflects the unfolding story of a creative universe in which human beings, us, are active and creative participants. Its expression unfolds through the general scheme of the creative process of insight, immersion, creation, and reflection. It reflects the sensual, meaning the feeling capacities of humans. It is tied to spirit and is both ecological and integrative. Our original instructions led us to understand that all things are connected, all things are related. We call ourselves the two-legged. Navajos refer to human beings as the five-finger beings. We have the privilege and the responsibility for learning, caring for, and participating in the ongoing recreation of the earth. The elders say, humankind has not woven the web of life. We are but one thread within it. Whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves. All things are bound together. All things connect. Chief Seattle. In the 1970s, James Lovelace and Lynn Margolin developed a theory they called, at the suggestion of William Golding, the novelist, the Gaia theory, or Gaia hypothesis. It was named for the Greek goddess of the earth, who personified earth. The concept is that basic elements of the earth influence each other and produce the coevolution and continued evolution of life in the environment. There are, of course, naysayers who do not believe that there is enough empirical evidence to prove it. But for Indigenous people, this is at the deepest level of our understanding that we may not have the proper scientific formulas, but speaking rationally, we knew this all along. The elders say, at the time will soon be here when my grandchild will long for the cry of a loon, the flash of a salmon, the whisper of spruce needles, or the screech of an eagle. But he will not make friends with any of these creatures. When his heart aches with longing, he will curse me. Have I done all I can to keep the air fresh? Have I cared enough about the water? Have I left the eagle to soar in freedom? Have I done everything I could to earn my grandchild's fondness? And that's Chief Dan George. Well, we had some excitement at Two Feathers Farm down in Pike County this week. I went out to feed the goats and the llama, and I couldn't find the llama anywhere. He was gone. And I looked all over, couldn't find him. So I went back to the house to tell my husband, I didn't find the llama. And he said, oh, that's too bad. And but the dogs were out. We have what we call dog park. The dogs were out in the dog park barking their heads off. And then I saw the neighbor's truck coming across his field, and he got out of the truck and I yelled, have you seen a llama anywhere? And he said, yeah, it's caught in the fence here. And he surely was, in the barbed wire fence. And so Rusty and his father and Doug finally went out. And I couldn't help very much. Got him untangled. He has really heavy hair. Got him untangled from the fence and put on a tether, and it took the whole thing altogether. It took about an hour to get that poor animal back into the paddock where he belongs. It was quite stressful because he was scared. And anyway, we got him back and he just stood there kind of like this. And the neighbor said he had seen 3 dogs in the paddock. And the llama leaped over the fence. He has never ever done that before, and raced across the field with the dogs after him. And I don't know whether he was trying to lead the dogs away from the goats or whether they were chasing him, but he was caught in the fence and he got out. And then after he was safe, and we all kind of calmed down a little bit, we stood there, and as we say, Pike County, doing what neighbors do, we were jawing for a while. We just stood there and we talked about the things that farmers talk about all the time. The crops, the weather, the neighbors. Can't help but that. And we were talking about the price of things. And, our fields are kind of a mess. We haven't hayed for a while. And so we haven't limed and fertilized. Well, Randy's family limes and fertilizes. And as Randy said, what we take out, got put back in. And that's what we all need to know. What we take out, we got to put back in. He had obviously taken some tobacco out and was chewing on it, and he put some of it back in. The elders say, the contrary winds may blow strong in my face, yet I will go forward and never go back, and continue to press forward until I am finished. I can't even pronounce the name of this elder. T.E. Delaware. Pike County was declared a state of emergency when the weather from the after effects of Hurricane Helene went through. There was a lot of flooding along the river, a lot of downed trees. We escaped, we're the 3rd terrace from the river. We escaped any water damage. But we've had a few close calls with large falling trees in the past, some of them missing the house by yay much. We have also had some trees that threatened to topple that most surely would cause major damage. Now, my husband is an extremely competent man. He has a master's of sociology and he has a master's of divinity. He ran an agency, some of you have heard of Huckleberry House, for 30 years. He helped a lot of people. He's also Scottish. In the nicest sense of the word, he does not want to pay somebody to do something he believes he can do himself. So one day, several years ago, my husband decided to try his hand in tree cutting. I was working at the kitchen sink one morning and saw through the window that a tree fairly close to the house had been girdled. Sort of. That was something new. So I went into my husband's office where he was working on his computer and asked him if he had girdled the tree. Oh yes, I did. This morning. It's got to come down. Now, my husband is a very smart man, but he has no experience in cutting down trees. However, it did not occur to me that that very afternoon, after he had girdled the tree that morning that he would go out and start to cut down the tree. I was working in my studio with my favorite dog, Chalagi, and I heard the chainsaw. And I immediately texted all 4 of my children. And they immediately texted back, and all 4 of them saying, call 911 now. So they'll be here when you need it. Well, I continued working on whatever I was working on, listening to that chainsaw, when all of a sudden I heard this, oh, and the house jumped. And I thought, oh my God. And Charlie and I ran to the door, and we looked out, and here's this tree lying in our in our kitchen garden. A lot of the limbs were on the roof of the house, and I didn't see Doug anywhere. And I'm trying to jumpstart my heart and find my phone to call 911 now. And all of a sudden there's a rustling in the trees and and he looks around and he says, that wasn't supposed to happen. Several hours later, I was fixing dinner and he came in the house very humbly. And he said, are you mad? And I told him that it would be best not to talk to me for another several hours. The less said, the sooner mended. Well, the elders say, I have learned a lot from trees, sometimes about the weather, sometimes about the animals, sometimes about the Great Spirit. The Great Spirit has provided you and me with an opportunity for study in nature's university, the forest, the rivers, the mountains, and the animals, which include us. This is from Walking Buffalo. I am sure that all of us appreciate the importance of trees and how they affect our lives. Just think of how trees can lift your spirits. They're ever changing. Towards the end of the winter, we can see a pink haze over the woods as the trees are just beginning to bud out. They're the harbingers of spring, and the little tiny hints of green as the leaves begin to grow, and then the beautiful full canopy of trees grow as the weeks go by. They provide shade in the heat. They shelter animals. They give space for birds to build their nests. Some food for us, apples and oranges and nuts and bananas and persimmons and so on. And these trees provide jobs for families during the fertile months. In the autumn, they astonish us with their beauty. Maybe not so much this year because of the drought, but they have their varieties of color. And when their leaves fall, it is a reminder to us to prepare for the cold and dark days of winter. And this is more important, trees eat the greenhouse gases that cause climate change. They clean the air. They help prevent soil erosion. They filter the water. And they are our only source of oxygen. And yet we destroy the trees with impunity because they are in the way of our desires. And yet there are many in our country who would level trees, who have great disdain for the ones they call tree huggers. When we lived in the city, we even had a neighbor who wanted us to cut down our trees because in the fall, the leaves blew into her yard. The elders say, Mother Earth has grown weary of the treatment she is getting. She is tired of having her lifeblood drained from her body. She is tired of having poisons poured into her arteries. She is sick of breathing polluted air. She is appalled with the plundering and raping of her beautiful body. We must now treat her with extreme respect. She is stronger than we are. We may become extinct. She will live on. Her wrath can be quick and mighty. Her love is even stronger. The choice is ours. Ever since the first colonizers arrived on these shores, they have considered trees to be an impediment to their progress. When the first white folks crossed into the Ohio River Valley from Pennsylvania, they were astonished by the sight of so many trees. Conrad Richter, in the first of his Awakening Land trilogy, I hope you've read that book, this one is called The Trees, describes what Sayard Luckett saw when her family first arrived in Ohio country. She saw what they looked down on was a dark, illimitable expanse of wilderness. It was a sea of solid treetops, broken only by some gash where deep beneath the foliage an unknown stream made its way. As far as the eye could reach, this lonely forest rolled on till its fake blue billows broke against an incredibly distant horizon. At first, these pioneers just cut down the few trees that it took to build their cabins and to make a little space for their fields. But as more and more folks moved in, the trees seemed a nuisance, and they began to clear cut the forests. All day long, axes rang out. And for months, smoke was in the air as they burned the fallen trees. In his book, The Pioneers, David McCullough explains that to these people, trees were the enemy. Even now, in any new development, the trees are the first to be bulldozed in order to clear the land of impediments. Land that once was rich in trees, that provided havens for birds, squirrels, chipmunks, deer, foxes, insects. People now complain about how deer are in their yards, geese are mucking up ponds, raccoons in their chimneys, woodchucks under the sheds, even coyotes wandering neighborhood streets. But we have taken their habitats, their food, and they, just like us, have the desire to live and to raise their young. The elders say we are all connected. If we are connected to all things, then whenever we harm anything, it causes harm to ourselves. We must respect our Mother Earth, and she will respect us in return. We must open our eyes and obey the spiritual laws that govern the earth and ourselves. On Easter Sunday this year, my husband and I were driving back from visiting our daughter and her husband in Cincinnati. We were traveling along Route 32, 4-lane highway, when suddenly across the highway, 3 deer leaped across. 2 of them smacked full force into our car. They were killed, and one of them actually hit so hard he flew back across the road. Our car was totaled, but we were not hurt. Several cars stopped. One woman said, "Okay, I'm calling 911," and we heard her say, "There's an elderly couple in the car." And I looked around, who was she? A couple of other people checked the deer to make sure that they were not suffering. And, I was reconfirmed in my belief in the goodness of human beings. I don't think anything will shake my belief in the goodness of human beings. But I was upset over the deaths of these animals. Their habitat was getting smaller and smaller. They had nowhere to go. I did learn one thing from this. I saw these deer coming a little bit before my husband did, and I yelled, "Deer, deer, deer!" And he said, "Yes, honey." Gregory Coyote says, native hunting and gathering at both the levels of process and experience placed native people in constant participation with their source of food. There are few other experiences that can develop empathy for the natural world in this way. Native hunting and gathering became both art and applied science and reinforced the sacred covenant that native communities had long established with the places where they lived. Since the 1950s, agribusiness, big agri, had begun to take over food production in this country. Huge machinery works the fields in lieu of human hands. Animals are raised in buildings and pens with scarcely room to move, force-fed with hormones and antibiotics to stimulate growth, and processed by the thousands for food. As a consequence, there is now a disconnect between the farmer, the land, and the animals. Family farms have become more and more a thing of the past, and small farm owners are hard-pressed to make ends meet, much less compete in the larger market. Many have had to take other jobs and simply farm during the weekends and in the evenings. It doesn't take too many years of this for our connection to the land, to the creatures on the land, to diminish, to be seen only for its monetary value and not for its intrinsic role in creation. The elders say, we need to save those elders who cannot speak for themselves, the trees. Well, some time ago, there were a number of trees near our house that really needed to be cut down. They were being undercut by a creek and leaning precipitously. And so Doug and I talked about it one day, and he said, I'm going to go talk to Jack and see who I can hire to cut these down. At least he's going to hire somebody. Jack is our go-to neighbor and a good friend, but the one thing you had to learn about Jack is you got to get to him before 11 o'clock in the morning while he's still sober. Must have been early afternoon when Doug went to talk to Jack, because he came back and he said, well, I've hired somebody. His name is Ernie. Oh, okay, tell me about Ernie. Well, Ernie's illiterate. So are a lot of people, that didn't matter. He works only with cash, and he has only one leg. So my husband hired a one-legged walker. And all I could do was think, I wonder if our insurance will cover any accidents Ernie might have. Well, when Ernie came to cut down the trees, he and I had a little talk, and he said to me, you need to cut down all these dadgum trees. Ain't worth nothing. He says, the only trees that are worth something are fruit trees, and they ain't worth much. Okay, thank you, Ernie. And he left that day with the job kind of half done. But Doug is a man who has infinite trust in our fellow human beings, and he paid him for the whole job. And before Ernie could come back to finish the job, He was arrested for his cooking skills. He's still in prison. And we never did get those trees fully down. The elders say our quest in our earth walk is to look within, to know who we are, to see that we are connected to all things, that there is no separation in the mind. Well, I tell you the Pike County stories because they're fun. But it's also important to consider what it means to live intimately with the landscape, to address the issues, that it is the attempt to control nature rather than to learn to live within her. Now, in spite of the rumors going around that there are 7 towers in Alaska that have been causing all the havoc with the weather lately, we mortals cannot control the weather, much less direct a hurricane attack on red states. We must control the damage that we have done to Mother Earth that leads to the massive destruction from wind and water. The elders say, we did not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrowed it from our children. Indigenous people understand that we are responsible to the 7 generations before us and to the 7 generations following us. It is an awful and wondrous task that we have when we think about our children and our grandchildren, when we think about the children in this congregation, the children playing out on the sidewalks and in the parks, to consider the condition of this world that we are borrowing from them and the messes that we are leaving for them to clean up. But together, we can find the way to participate in the recreation and the healing of Mother Earth. Together. Hear me, Tecumseh said. A single twig breaks, but the bundle of twigs is strong. The elders say, together, we can end the Holocaust against the environment. Wanda. So, Sharon has promised to share something that she has written while she's commencing. I'll just say that the cedar is the Cherokee sacred tree, and we have 7 clans. I only brought, each clan has its own wood, and I'm Bird Clan, and it's a sycamore. So this is symbolic of us. But Sharon, you want this? Probably.
I can project.
Okay.
Do you want me to be up there?
Where are you coming? Yeah, stand up so people face us. I can hear you.
These are a few short poems that I wrote. When my husband and I retired to Columbus in 2007, we bought a home in Clintonville. And the home we bought was built in 1928. And the reason that I bought the home was because of 2 trees. And this poem is about one of them. Old, wise, white oak. She was always there, strong and seemingly without care, gracing the sky and resting her beauty between two homes. As the many seasons come and go, came and went, day and night, she offered herself as strength and peace for my soul. Now she is split apart, torn asunder, for prudent reasons alone. What will I do without her steadfast presence? What will I do? The day she was cut down, I had my daughter be there because I couldn't be there. Returning to my home without your mighty presence dwells like heartache. Yet even deeper within me, a loss of part of me too has been returned to the earth. I walk my yard and find remnants of you, one of which I rescued, a leaf I brought with me to place at the labyrinth's center, amidst broken green and brown paisley glass, a gift of you and myself for all you gave, your imprint ever present within me, your loss a part of me forever. The tree rocked me at the Sanctuary of the Arts in Sunbury, Ohio. The tree rocked me at the labyrinth center. Blessed assurance, a beginning of coming to grips with your loss beside my home. The tree rocked me and my eyes welled with tears. A tree gives all of itself graciously, a wise soul, no matter its age, gracing this earth with wondrous beauty. Humans may complain about falling leaves and roots that intrude and even take the life of an old wise soul for prudent reasons. Yet for me, the rhythm of your seasons give me hope. As the new leaves of spring give way to summer shade and the blaze of fall emerges, only to be released to the earth as a sign that winter is near. Your constant presence at the side of my house, a source of strength and wisdom for me. I deeply grieve your passing. And then we moved to Hilliard in a suburban division. And now my home was built in 1992. And I wrote this. Truth is, in this neighborhood, I'm older than the trees, older than my home, and older than the topsoil laid on Mother Earth that's immediately under my feet. So my comfort level doesn't seem as grounded, sure, as in my older established neighborhood where the trees, home, and earth seem to hold me. Here, I become part of a holding, the crone writ large, though this may be mere illusion. In this place, I'm older than the trees. And finally, trees have taught and given me abundant wisdom. As a 3-year-old, swinging wildly on the ropes the tree held and in turn held me, I knew of the deep mystery of creation that embraced my soul, my very being. Still does.
I do want to point out one thing. Thank you, Sharon. We need to just sit with this for a little bit. This is the tree of knowledge. Obviously sheltering the birds. These are the ancestors. They're not warriors. They're hunter-gatherers. And they are our forebears. And these are the spirits of all the birds, the animals that this tree has sheltered. And you have to look closely and come up from that and see the tree is talking. The tree talks to us. Do you have any questions, comments?
Did you paint that?
Now, this is Anishinaabe artist James Jimmy Jacko, and from Manitoulin Island. And Manitoulin Island is actually a very holy place for the Anishinaabe people. And I think it is so completely filled with artists that I just, whenever I go there, I just want to sit there, and feel it. But it's beautiful. It's a beautiful place.
I can't help but think about the twisting of the trunk of the tree. It has had something in its past that has caused it to move in that direction and out and around. And I first became aware of the tree rings as a child on a farm with my uncle and down in the woods, and the tree would be cut down, and he really did everything to save every tree, even didn't want to cut a tree for Christmas on those big woods. But I was fascinated by the tree rings, but I didn't know how to read them. And we have a friend out at Bryce, or Zion, actually, and he grew up there because his dad was the first ranger in that park. And his life work has been geology, and he reads tree rings for a job. He's now an elder. He's a little older than I am, but what's so interesting is you can sit with him and he can say, okay, now we all know you can count back on those tree rings, but you want to look at the exact thing that happened in that year. Was it a year when it was taking on water? Was it a year when there was drought? And there's so much that we can learn of the past history just by the age of trees.
Yeah. Yeah, we have the most beautiful tree. I was gonna take a picture of it and bring it, but I didn't want you all to be jealous. Because it's up on the ridge. We've got a little cabin up on the ridge, and it's right beside the cabin. And it was so cool. And the branches, just go, she just dances, as she's standing there where she is. It's absolutely amazing. This tree. And since I'm thinking about it, please don't read your children or grandchildren the giving tree. Oh, that story is supposed to be so nice of a self-sacrificing tree. It's really about a very selfish boy. Just make up a different story. Yeah. Make up a better story. I like Shel Silverstein, but not that one. Okay? Yeah. So
I was recently driving down Neal Avenue right near town, and they have the most beautiful trees all along that area, and they are probably quite old. And it's just a lovely neighborhood. Very old houses too. That's what I like too. The trees are just fabulous.
I think, at least in my experience, and I'm thinking in yours, there has to be a tree or two in your lives that you can go back to. When I was about 9 years old, a little girl around the corner, they had a wild backyard and they had all kinds of prune trees, and we would start climbing those prune trees in June. And sitting there, climbing the trees, and we would use them not only to wait for the prunes to become plums and to eat them and get all sticky because of that, but also to climb the trees and pretend we were Tarzan and Jane, and we're trying to be the bad guys and the good guys. And then my mother, when she was 7 years old, planted a maple, whirligig, and it was finally cut down. That was back in 1920. She had it cut down about 1992. And I took pictures of her with it.
and one is a loss.
A loss, that's
And then when my mother died, my stepson sent money and we had a tree planted in my backyard here in Columbus that I call Mom's tree. And when I move, it's gonna come with me. But you know, the connection and what you're saying, what you shared, Sharon, there are these, but you have to stop and you have to be silent and you have to spend time with them. Not in a way that is just Thomas Burton talks about, he was sitting up in his cabin and then he went outside and he was just sitting there and a wren was hopping around and then it hopped onto his shoulder. And it stayed there for a while. And then it flew off. And all of a sudden, and I don't know if it was just that one incident or what, but he basically said, all of a sudden I became aware that this wren has a life of its own. It's in parallel with me. It's not a God created man to have dominion over everything, but this little wren, whatever triggers it to come and to go and the same thing with our pets. They live a parallel life. And when I look at my 16-and-a-half-year-old cat, and when she decides to get up and when she comes to me and what she wants, you know, it's like there is a real alternate essence that I need to respect, and that goes with animals, it goes with plants. It's just, anyway, that's all. Thank you.
I live in a nice neighborhood with lots of trees. The neighborhood's about 35 years old. But unfortunately, when the sidewalks were put in and the streets, it didn't leave a lot of room for the trees. So subsequently, the roots are heaving up and raising the sidewalks. So there have been a lot of broken bones, and I've had a few falls myself on those sidewalks. So people who call the city, the first thing they do is they come out and they cut down the offending tree, and then they replace the sidewalk. And it breaks my heart. I don't think ever of the sidewalks.
Debating, I don't know what to do with this fact. My husband was drafted during Vietnam. He was a physician. Most physicians were drafted. He wound up being assigned to an engineering battalion, and it consisted of many Roman plows that went through the jungles in long lines for 30 days at a time and just mowed it down. They then circled the tanks for safety, and then they would come back every 30 days and then we could go in. I don't know what to do with that. It was during the war. There was Agent War, there was Agent Orange, and that was his assignment. So, and it prompts me to think of all the natural things that are being destroyed in the world now with the lights and of course going on.
It is heartbreaking, but you know, we can't correct the faults in the past. You know, and for some people that seemed like the thing to do at the time. We can look forward to the future and do something in the future. That's all I can think. You know, that's all I can
That's
think.
the way to look at it. Do now.
Yeah.
My wife and I experienced something very positive in July when we went home to Canada. And we went to Ottawa, where we had not been in many years, to visit my wife's sister. I said, why don't we go to the National Gallery of Art? So there is a repository there of paintings by the foremost Canadian painters of the early 20th century called the Group of Seven. And so within the museum, there's a large gallery room, and they had representative large canvases of each member of the Group of Seven. And generally the pictures were of the Ontario North of trees and lakes. And in the middle of the room, on an elevated pedestal, was a large Indigenous canoe. So what the curators had cleverly done was unite the history of Canada, which was opened up by the canoe, which of course is a wood framework. And then they knit that to the group of 7 paintings were about trees. And then for people pondering the art, to see the canoe and to think about where did the canoes come, why are we here right now? And it was a very beautiful room to be in because of that close juxtaposition of the past, an Indigenous canoe made of wood, meant to travel the lakes that were portrayed in the picture. So one came away with that with a feeling of curious optimism that the past is past, but we can acknowledge the past graciously and relish it, and that enhances our present and our future.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just before, I think it was just before COVID, my husband, he entered into an agreement with federal government, which I had a fit about because I'm an Indian. And I don't really think that we're gonna get what I'm an Indian. So let me go there. But they planted 1,500 trees in a particular area on our property and hardwoods. And, our agreement was, the agreement was we would pay $1,500 down and then they would return it. That's where I had a little trust issue right there. But they did. And now that planting was followed by years of drought, and I don't know how well those trees have done. But the very idea, though, that Doug kept saying, "I'm leaving something for our children," and that part was nice, and I hope they're coming.
I'm sorry, I didn't want to
Go ahead.
before. So, thank you, Sharon, for the poem, and thank you, Jean, for your presentation. It was excellent. I was admiring the work of the artist, and so I was looking at a couple of other things. I'm assuming that the yellowish thing at the bottom of the tree is water. If I think so.
No.
And what is it?
This is, we believe in under the world. This is under the world. Now it's not gruesome, it's not trolls or anything, but they're creatures, they're critters who live under the soil, within the roots sometimes. And we have the sense of the time that was before, the time that is now, the time that will come, the upper world and the underworld. And this is what that's all about. I know.
But you wanted to say something? Sorry.
Okay.
Quickly, going back to the same thing, painting without having any knowledge of what you just said, just like I'm looking at it from my own eyes. So I'm assuming that is water, that whatever you're describing, so that is needed for the growth of the tree. Then the light on one side, light is essential for the growth of the tree, and the bending of the tree towards the light. Also, the mouth of the tree trunk is like a node. The artist made how we have nodes on trees or plants, and the growth of any plant takes place from that node. So the tree is saying that make sure that you take care of me.
That's
And of course, then the resilience of this tree, and I'm trying to relate it to myself. For example, you see the curvature in the trunk, like the spine of an old person, the wisdom is there. The person has this bent spine, but is resilient and it's still standing tall with all the branches spread out. And the fruits that you see and the birds, it's life, and then the struggle of the resilience of though there's a lot of resilience of the gatherers, hunters in the bottom, where you see them going forth with their mission. And so we as human beings are made to respect, not to control, as long as we take care, have balance in our lives.
Thank you. Yeah,
Thank you.
that's good art. When we can look at it and we can have our understanding there.
Makes you think.
Yeah. So, well, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, get ready for chaos.